Just a reminder, you can catch me recording this podcast live on AMP. AMP is a new live radio app that lets you call in and chat with me in person while recording. Get the app on Apple's App Store and make sure you follow me at John Middlekauff to get notified when I go live. What is going on, everybody? John Middlekauff, 3 and Out podcast. How are we doing? Subscribe wherever you may listen to podcasts. As well as if you're watching this on the Volumes YouTube channel, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the page, and leave a comment below in the description. Lot of football content coming up. Aaron Rodgers, and an interesting article about him and the Packers came out this week. Tom Brady pledges he's not coming back, as well as DeAndre Hopkins and the drama that is his current free agency status. We will dive into it all. But first, can I tell you about the official ticketing app of this podcast? Gametime. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to grab your smartphone, go to your app store, download Gametime. It's the number one fastest growing ticketing app in America right now. I've used them. You should too. And when you do, you can go to games, baseball games. You want to go to a football game this fall, college or pro. Concerts. You see Taylor Swift. She's on tour. I don't know if you've noticed. One of the biggest stories in America. If you don't want to see her, you can see whoever you want. Comedy shows, they got you covered. Just use the promo code JOHN, JOHN. That happens to be my name, and get $20 off your first pair of tickets. So you want to go to a sporting event, anything pro, anything college, any concert, any comedy show, any event, get out of the house, go have a good time, and do it on me. I don't even need a thank you card. Just use the promo code and have a good time. Promo code John. Download the Gametime app right now. Official ticketing app of this show. We love those guys. So should you, because they're awesome. Let's start with Aaron Rodgers. And listen, this is sometimes I think in this business, people play the hits, right? The Dallas Cowboys, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, the New York Yankees, right? LeBron James. And then there are just times when it's just a continuation of a story, right? Brady and Belichick, the moment they got a divorce, I'm sorry, that story amplified. And to me, and I think to a lot of people, that story was fascinating, right? Belichick, what was he going to do at quarterback? The Cam Newton debacle. They missed the playoffs. Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. The way it all played out, then he drafted Mac Jones. Then Tom Brady was, miserable with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we thought. Bruce Arians, did he force him to quit? There were so many variables of that story. It just made it pretty interesting. And I think with the Aaron Rodgers story, and there was a long article, and I read it on The Athletic, a subscription-based service, if you haven't checked it out. They do good work. And a long article about kind of the breakup of Aaron Rodgers. And I think anyone listening to this, I don't know if it happens for older people, but definitely, my generation, when you're in your 20s, I would imagine a lot of people now in their 20s, when you are texting with someone, whether it be a current girlfriend or someone you're chasing, and they don't text you back, that's a pretty good sign. It's over. Move on. Go do something else. And in this day and age, with how often our phones are with us, listen, we can go to places where there's bad service. If someone does not contact you back after you have reached out, especially after a couple day period, just move on with your life. Or it's, a sign to yourself that hey, that person is no longer interested. And I think this works not just in personal relationships, but professionally. If you're trying to get a job, and listen, I'm all for being very, very persistent, being very, very aggressive, doing whatever it takes, email, texting, phone calls, guerrilla marketing of yourself to get whatever you want, whether it's a deal, whoever. Eventually, if you don't hear back, there comes a point in time where it's probably not worth your time. And a big part of this Aaron Rodgers story was this texting back and forth between Gutekunst and Rodgers. And Rodgers' big thing was I don't have great service in my Malibu home over the water, over the Pacific Ocean. Aaron, I think, is living pretty good. Not great service, I guess, in Malibu, California. But listen, we've all been places where the service isn't great, somewhat understandable for a moment in time, but eventually you leave. Eventually the text messages and the emails come through. You got the internet, you connect to Wi-Fi, So if the guy calls you or shoots you a text, it comes through if you're connected to the Wi-Fi. So to me, it's a little bullshit. But I also think it represents there's nothing wrong with both sides. Cool with moving on. it doesn't mean one side is more right than the other, or one side is eventually going to be validated more than the other. Like, let's face it, Tom Brady won the argument, right? Went to Tampa, took a joke franchise, Super Bowl, playoffs. Now, we could debate this year's playoffs, pretty questionable. But overall, his success relative to Belichick's success without him, even though I actually think Belichick with Mac Jones, who I'm not that high on, has been pretty impressive through 2 years since he got him and pivoted off Cam. But still, like, Tom won the argument. Not that, like, to me, Belichick is some scrub coach. I still believe the 20 years that I watch him out schematic his opponent with moves, with plays, with decisions is easily one of, if not the best coach I've ever seen any sport. But like, Tom Brady won the Super Bowl and took Tampa back to the playoffs, hosting the Rams in the second round the following year. You know, Belichick's getting curb stomped against the Buffalo Bills. And how this plays out, I don't know. I am pretty bullish on the New York Jets. I think they're going to be pretty damn good. But they got some question marks. Nate Hackett, Robert Saleh as a head coach, just the organization in general. Haven't been to the playoffs, longest time for any professional team. The Packers, like, in theory, they might not be that bad. Ton of high picks over the years, a lot of speed on offense, a consistent running game, some young skill guys that showed out as the season went on last year. But their quarterback, like, I'm sorry, like, I've seen LaFleur with a really good quarterback. They can win games. Give me Jordan Love. Not even they can feel very confident, i.e. the contract they gave him. But this story about the breakup, like, it was just time. I feel like I've been hammering this home for a long period of time, but articles keep coming out that try to justify one side or the other side. Like, Gutekunst and LaFleur and the Packers in general were over Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was kind of over them. Sometimes once you've been, in a relationship professionally for that long, like, it's okay to go your separate ways. Now, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be a massive, massive topic. Like the Dallas Cowboys, the LA Lakers, the New York Yankees. I will defend anyone that says, like, why are you talking about them when they suck or when they're not some, Super Bowl, World Series, NBA Finals contenders, when they're an under 500 team. That is fair. And the reason anyone does it in this business is because it's a quantity game and they got more fans than any other team. And when you talk about the Yankees or the Cowboys, it works. When you talk about certain other teams in any sport, just because they're good, it's not guaranteed. I'm recording this before the Denver Nuggets play the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. I got news for you. Not many people are going to watch this NBA Finals relative to some previous NBA Finals. It doesn't mean there aren't great players, great coaches, and it could be very, very entertaining, but it's just a numbers game. And I think when you factor in Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the most polarizing players, the Green Bay Packers, who are easily one of the biggest brands in American sports, and the New York Jets, while they've sucked forever, they are in New York. They have a large fan base. I am fascinated by this story. I'm on record. I think the Jets are going to be good. I don't know if I'm going to pick them. We still got a ways to go, whether I'm going to pick them to win the division, but I'm definitely picking them to make the playoffs. And I am intrigued by the Packers. Do I think they're going to be good? I don't, just because history would tell me to bet against Jordan Love. And I'm not going to practice. I don't know anyone on the staff who's banging the table to me that, like, this guy's going to be the next star. And like I said, just the number, the chances that you get 3 straight, really just 2 straight Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and then just a good one. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't really grow up on Joe Montana. Like, I was born in 1984, but when I really came into my own as a sports fan, Steve Young was the quarterback, and Steve Young won multiple MVPs. The 49ers were awesome, won a Super Bowl. And then when he got KO'd, his career ended with a concussion. They transitioned to Jeff Garcia, who obviously isn't a Hall of Fame player, but was making Pro Bowls, was really good. Like, they kept making the playoffs because of him. The chances that Jordan Love is Jeff Garcia, history would say slim to none. Like, that's not going to happen. But I'm fascinated to watch it. And listen, I know some Packer fans that are excited for this whole, I don't want to call it an experiment, but it kind of is. They've made this decision before, and they got Aaron Rodgers. We'll see what happens with Jordan Love, but this is a story that just is going to just keep giving. And I'm cool with it. I am pretty fascinated. Now, if the Packers and the Jets both suck, I'm not just going to talk about it to talk about it. Another story that just is not going to die, at least until this guy kind of attempted to make it die today. We talked about Jimmy Garoppolo earlier in this week, that how insane it was for the Las Vegas Raiders, a team pretty desperate, a team that moved on for a stalwart at quarterback. While he was an inconsistent player, he was very, very durable, and you knew what you were going to get. Now, he didn't mesh with the head coach. So they trade Derek Carr, or they cut Derek Carr, and then he goes, I guess they couldn't trade him, so they cut him. He's with the Saints now. For them to hitch their wagon to Jimmy Garoppolo, who literally can't pass a physical for the second year in a row during this period of time, to me is insane. And Josh McDaniels said today that he's comfortable and he's confident that Jimmy's going to be healthy. No one can say that. Not Jimmy's mom, not Jimmy's dad, not Jimmy Garoppolo, not Don Yee, Jimmy's agent, because Jimmy's always injured. And the likelihood that Jimmy is going to stay healthy is very, very slim. History would show us that. But Tom Brady, who I think a lot of people, probably I'm guilty of this as well, have said, like, keep an eye on this. Until Tom Brady, we go a season without Tom playing. He's not working for Fox this year. He's taking the year off. Now, I wouldn't say I listen or read gossip stuff, but there's enough buzz. I keep an eye on the internet streets, the interweb. And there's some buzz, like obviously they're splitting custody between the kids and based in Florida. You know, is Tom going to move to Vegas just because he is a part-time owner? If I had to take an educated guess, the league is cool. They want a guy like him to be involved. And based on the money, it's not like Tom just bought 25% of the Las Vegas Raiders, right? He might have just bought $50 million, which gets you, who knows, a percentage point, 2 percentage points. And when you're a minority owner in pro sports, but I know this specifically in the NFL, you have zero juice. You have no pull on players. You have no pull on whether the coach stays or goes. Now, this is a unique situation. I think this looks good for Mark Davis. Obviously, Tom Brady is very, very close with Josh McDaniels, but he was adamant today, I'm not coming back. I'm over it. Like we talked about Aaron Rodgers and Brian Gutekunst. The organization and the player were kind of over each other. It was time. Sometimes you just get over doing something, even if you love football as much as Tom Brady loved football. And I don't think you can love it anymore. But at his age, not wanting to get hit, like I think it made sense. I said it all season long. Tom Brady's arms still look good. He never was that mobile. It's not like he ran around, so his athleticism didn't really diminish. It was that he didn't want to get hit in the pocket. And I don't blame him. Like, he'd been hit in the pocket for multiple decades. He's super rich, super accomplished. Like, what was he doing it for? As Ricky Waters once famously said, for who? For what? And that's, to me, how Tom played a little bit. And to think that Tom Brady would come back to the Raiders just because Josh McDaniels was there, their offensive line is atrocious. Their defense isn't very good. Their team, just in general, beside a couple players, Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, is not very talented. Tom Brady's not coming back just to come back. And think of some of his peers, right? Peyton Manning, who is really his peer. Now, Peyton Manning, when it ended for him, and I went to a game that last season when he played the Raiders, and it was right in the middle of like, is this over? Like, what is going on with Peyton Manning's arm? It can't be that bad. Remember, the announcers used to be like, he's just saving it. He's good. Just takes him a little longer to get warmed up. Turned out he couldn't throw. His arm did not work, right? Did not work. He could barely throw it 20 yards. I remember going to the game against the Raiders, and the big story was that Charles Woodson had never intercepted Peyton Manning. And Charles was on his last leg. His shoulder was like, had a harness keeping it together. Peyton was clearly on his last leg. In that game, my memory serves me correct, Charles Woodson intercepted him twice. Now, the Broncos still won the game. I think Derek threw a pick six to Chris Harris. But it was like, God, Peyton he's fucked. Like, it is over. And so Peyton didn't have a choice. Like, would Peyton have walked away? He would have been like Tom. He would have stayed into his early 40s if he could have. The league left him, which happens to 99.9% of good players, let alone any player, right? Most people are not John Elway that say, see ya, I'm walking out on top. Most people, hell, are like Peyton Manning, Tiger Woods, holding on for dear life, even as the body does not cooperate. So could Tom Brady have come back? 100%. Tom Brady could be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's no longer a top 3 or 4 starting quarterback, but he easily could be better than half the league. And if he truly wanted to get hit, he could easily be a top 10 quarterback. But the moment you don't want to get hit, it's why some players like Derek Carr is very, very talented. If Derek Carr was willing to stand in there, like some of the top guys in the league, Mahomes, I would put Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers for a large percentage of his prime, he would be a top 10 quarterback. But he's not really willing to stand in there. And I'm not acting like some tough guy like I'd be willing to stand in there. We're just talking about the best quarterbacks in the league and consistently in the league. You have to be willing to stay in the pocket and deliver strikes. If you're not some mobile guy like Lamar Jackson, right? Or even Trevor Lawrence, a lot of these quarterbacks are very, very mobile. Tom's never been. So the moment he won't stand in there to the last second and deliver the ball, his skill level and his ability to produce at the highest level is just going to be diminished. And I think he recognizes that. Like, it's not worth it for me anymore, regardless, separate from my family situation. And it'd be one thing if the Raiders were like, God, this team with Tom Brady, they win 13, 14 games easily. But he knows. He's not that dumb. And I keep getting back to all the chips in the middle of the table of Josh McDaniels' head coaching career is on Jimmy Garoppolo. And that is proven. And I've had a front row seat. I've gone to so many of these 49er training camp practices. I know a lot of people with the organization. It is just a very, very risky proposition to bet on that individual who just struggles to stay on the field. Before we dive into what's next, do you know that Angie's List is now Angie, your home for everything home? And as someone who is currently house shopping and who has bought property before, you walk in, you go, well, I need to fix the kitchen. I want to improve this bathroom. I want to fix some stuff in the backyard. And then you go, well, I don't do this for a living. Where do I even start? Who do I even contact? That's where Angie has 20 years of experience combined with new tools to simplify the process. Over 220,000 pros in their network. They can help you get the best price for your product. They have new projects that are priced upfront and clearly lays out the cost before you buy. With Angie, you can request quotes from multiple pros in your area. The pros in your network are locally based. In just a few taps in the Angie app or click on the site, you can have Angie tackle your home service project from start to finish. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com. One thing that happened this week, this wasn't a football story, but it was just a sports story, is Bob Myers, the Golden State Warriors general manager, who has been, one of the lead recruiters in getting Kevin Durant, is best friends with Draymond Green and Steph Curry, and has proven to be one of the best GMs, not just in the NBA, but in all of sports. Basically said, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't necessarily want to talk about the reasoning behind that, but I do think that Bob represents, and the NBA and the NFL are different in terms of, the way that even non-like superstar players, you just kind of have to kiss the ass of the players. But a lot of NBA GMs are very, very close with their players. And forever, and even when I got in the NFL, 12 years ago, growing up through football, there was like a clear line of delineation between management and players. Because in football, more than especially basketball and baseball, with the contracts not being guaranteed, you could get rid of a guy at any moment. The moment he stopped producing, the moment you just upgraded in the draft, you would cut a guy. You would trade a guy. You had to be pretty ruthless, right? It was like a lot of other industries in America. Why a lot of the best businessmen, I think, are considered like, yeah, he's kind of an asshole, kind of a dick, not the greatest guy. Was he not the greatest guy, or is he just really good at business? And sometimes business is going to piss people off. And to be a great businessman in football, historically, it's kind of been Bill Parcells. Bill Walsh is most famously known for, beside the Super Bowls, not getting rid of a player 1 year too early than instead of a year too late. He got rid of them all. He traded Joe Montana. So this notion that GMs and front office people could be friends with players was just kind of frowned upon and not something that successful people do. Well, I think Bob Myers retiring, and he represents the NBA people, but like Bob Myers is very good buddies with John Lynch. And I actually think the new age NFL GM is a little closer than NBA than we ever talk about. Think about the best GMs in the league, pretty close with their players, their star players, pretty close with that group. They are very agent friendly. I remember being a kid, you would see some of the great rants by either a coach or a GM would be like talking shit about agents. Hell, I remember, what year would this have been? I mean, I would have been like a sophomore in college when the moment happened with Terrell Owens, Drew Rosenhaus, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Look at Andy Reid. I would say he is one of the most universally approved head coaches when it comes to people that played for him in league history. And they had a pretty knockdown drag out with T.O. and Drew Rosenhaus. And I think those days are kind of done. Like when you listen to Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce or anyone with the Chiefs talk about, management, they love Brett Veach. Think of how the players on the Eagles talk about Howie Roseman. I've seen it firsthand with John Lynch. John Lynch has this kind of weird hybrid role because he was a really famous Hall of Fame level player. And honestly, his role, the most important thing he has to do is like calm down Kyle. There was an instance, I guess, the other day at 49er practice where Dwayne Allen, former tight end in the NFL, now works for the NFLPA. And he was at practice just like a lot of NFL union representatives go to football practices throughout the offseason to just like take notes and make sure that you're not, doing things you're not supposed to do, press coverage, tackle, physicality levels. And I don't know the exact story. I mean, there are some different versions out there. One version I heard is he made a comment. One thing, he was 100% like in the huddle, very close to the players. Some people say that he made a comment like that's a violation. I can't confirm nor deny that. The one thing I can confirm, Kyle Shanahan basically stopped practice and went nuts on Dwayne Allen in the middle of practice. And I'm on Team Shanahan on this one. If you're a union representative, one, the guy running the practice, you have to let know that you're there. Kyle did not know who he was. So he just thought this random guy was at practice. And then he was like in the huddle with guys or close to the huddle. That's never going to fly. But my point with this is ultimately the guy that mediated that was John Lynch. As the practice went on and went and talked to him, calmed the whole situation down. And that's one of John's main roles. And one thing these modern day GMs have to do is like, you are paying random players $10, $15 million. You're playing your star D linemen, O linemen, wide receivers, 20 to 25 to upward to $30 million. And obviously, if you have a star quarterback, you're easily spending over $40 million a year. So it behooves you when your team and the team that you're in charge of is invested so heavily into these guys. I wouldn't say to be their friend, but have a legit working relationship. Like, think how many people you work with that you wouldn't call your best friend or someone you hang out with all the time. But like, if you go to a happy hour, that if you're on a work trip, like you can easily hang out and you have more than a cordial relationship. Like, you consider the person your friend. You don't maybe go out of your way to hang out with the guy, but you definitely, when you spend time with them, you like them and you talk to them a lot. And it's just a relationship that, even relative to some of your friends outside of work, sometimes the people you work with, you end up spending more time with. So I think this modern day GM of Howie, I think John Schneider is now playing this role in Seattle. I've seen it with John Lynch playing the role for sure. Jason Light did it once he got Tom Brady, is kind of straddling the line, straddling the fence of, you kind of got to get close to these people, especially generations change. People like when they feel liked. Back in the day, it was cutthroat. You just kind of dealt with that. Those days are probably over. Wouldn't it behoove you, if you're going to pay some D lineman or your quarterback or whoever $100+ million guaranteed to like be all in with the guy, to really like the guy and to work on having a strong relationship with the human separate from the player? And I think that's just a fact. Like the days of Bill Parcells, Bill Walsh, even Bill Belichick, even though I think a lot of players over the years has defended Belichick He's much easier to deal with in person than he is the way the media seems. But in terms of the way he deals with you on his team, like he never went to dinner with Tom Brady. Like that just wasn't their relationship. Those days are kind of over. And I think we're only going to see that, come to fruition around the league, moving much more forward. And if I was an owner, like that's kind of what I want on my GM. I want a guy that these agents are the gatekeeper to the most important people in the league, the players. So getting in with the agents is very, very important. When I was a kid, like GMs hated agents. Now they're more than a necessary evil. Like they're part of the business. And if you can't deal with them, if you can't be friends with them, if you can't have very, very good relationships with them, it's probably not going to work. One story that won't die, it's going to be interesting how this plays out. Albert Breer reported that DeAndre Hopkins, his market is tepid at best. And I think a huge reason, if DeAndre Hopkins was cool with playing for $5 million, there'd be 15 teams lined up to pay him or, attempt to sign him, make him a starter, get him on their offense with their offensive coordinator and their quarterback immediately. But he wants a lot of money. And I think sometimes, with a guy like this, and we talked about it earlier in the week, he saw Odell Beckham get 15. He knows he's better than Odell Beckham, and he's not wrong. But just because someone else signs a terrible deal, Deshaun Watson, doesn't mean that quarterbacks that are more deserving, better players, better people, are going to get that contract. And that's kind of, played out, right? Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. I would rather have both those guys than Deshaun Watson. Yet neither of them sniffed the $230 million guaranteed. And DeAndre Hopkins, still available. And I saw that Deshaun Watson talked about, he still talks to DeAndre all the time. I think he's pounding the table trying to get him in. It did make me think that there are a lot of pressure teams. I mean, it's the NFL. So the overwhelming majority of the league, coaches, star quarterbacks, highly paid players are under a lot of pressure to perform. But last year, Deshaun Watson really got a pass, right? They were only paying him $1 million. He was suspended the majority of the season. No one thought they were going to be that good with him missing the whole time. They turned out not to be. And when he got back, he was really shitty. And people were like, well, he hadn't played in forever. I think there's a ton of pressure on everyone involved. Now, if they suck, you can't fire Deshaun Watson, right? His contract basically puts him on scholarship. But Stefanski's clearly in a make or break season. And if he's really bad, here's the thing. If he's really bad, how could they get a coach? Like the one thing Denver had going for him, when their owner was willing to pay a coach $18 million, and maybe Jimmy Haslam would too. But ultimately, Russell had 9+ years of being like a Hall of Fame elite player, and especially the last 5 or 6 years. So you go, listen, even if he is washed, if I can get a couple years close to what he once was, we're big time, right? Deshaun had like a season and a half, and the one season that was clearly his breakout season, the team was god-awful. They won 4 games. So I think there are a lot more question marks than answers with Deshaun Watson in general. I think the Browns, historically bad teams and poor organizations don't overcome adversity and question marks easily, right? Like ultimately the Steelers, like there's some question marks. By the end of the season, like, yeah, they're pretty good. You wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs, right? Even Belichick is like, yeah, Mac Jones, Bill O'Brien, how's it going to work out? Like, yeah, they're probably not going to be great, but they'll win 9 games, right? The Browns, you convince me they win 6. You can convince me if Deshaun Watson's a Pro Bowl level player, they win 11. But I got no clue. I wouldn't put my my cash on it. I have no faith, especially on them being good. I would bet on them being bad just because that's what history says. And I just think anytime you put a microscope on a team that doesn't really know how to win, a lot of players that don't necessarily know how to win, things go bad quick. That's why I say about the Lions. Like, I'm bullish on the Lions. I think the Lions are going to be pretty good. But even Lion fans would have to admit, like, it's going to be a little different. Everyone looking at us like, oh, yeah, they're going to win 10 games this year. Right? They're locked to make the playoffs. That's usually not how that franchise carries itself. A coach who's never proven to be a playoff coach, a lot of players that have obviously never played in the playoffs. So it's going to be fascinating to me to watch just this Cleveland Brown, Deshaun Watson contract situation kind of play it out. And last but not least, the college football year, we're just a year away from a lot of the movement of USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, Texas, I think goes to the SEC in 2024. I think a lot of people on the West Coast, I know a lot of Oregon fans kind of wonder, like, is the Pac-12 going to survive? Or Oregon, Washington eventually going to get an invite to the dance? The ACC recently came out with they're going to give tiered revenue, which is the right move, right? Clemson football, North Carolina basketball, Florida State football, they're carrying the conference. Why do they have to split with Boston College, right? We're not all equals in the conference. And this college football season, I think, is going to be awesome. I can't wait to watch these quarterbacks. I think sometimes we get quarterbacks that are overhyped. Caleb Williams is not overhyped. And from what I've been told, Drake May's not overhyped either. Now, part of being a great player is doing it over and over and over again. So the moment you dip, people start questioning you. Even if you still play well, the way that we question top players, part of the deal. I mean, look at what we did to the guys in the draft this year. You rip them all apart. Hell, we were ripping Trevor Lawrence a couple years apart. Part of the deal, man. But I am very, very excited to watch, LSU with Brian Kelly. Lincoln Riley has got a bunch of SEC guys in the transfer portal. My favorite guy, Steve Sarkisian, Arch Manning, who's technically not even the starting quarterback, but a ton of pressure on that program. Oklahoma, I mean, is their coach going to be basically a Venables, a two and done guy? I mean, that's a program that anything less than 9 wins is a disaster. And honestly, 9-3 doesn't feel that great at Oklahoma. It's usually double-digit wins every season. To just Harbaugh, Ohio State. I'm really, really excited for college football, and this is truly one of the last years. College football has been changing, and college athletics in general, but it's one of the last years that we get some purity is the wrong way to say it, but just some old school matchups. Like USC is not going to play Oregon unless Oregon goes to the Big Ten like consistently anymore. Like they're going to play Iowa and they're going to play Wisconsin. Like Oklahoma playing K-State or Iowa State. Like those days are about to end, which I'm going to miss. I wouldn't say I'm like super old school where I'm like, this could never change, but I'm also not exactly coward where I'm pounding the table, glad this is happening. Born and raised in California, like I like watching USC and UCLA and basketball and football play the West Coast schools, but I'm also not ignorant, naive, or don't have the business understanding of why this is happening. So I'm just really going to try to soak in this fall and enjoy some of these matchups that I grew up on that are just going to die, and they're going to die very, very soon.